All right. So now we're going to go into kind of talking about how we can measure some stuff, and we'll do extrude, and then we'll get into measuring some stuff. And we've been using mostly inches, right? And then this class so far today, but I showed you that you can mix the units. And so, what if you wanted to just do everything in millimeters? Yep.
Go to settings and change your base units.
Yep. So go here, documents. So you can go up through your preferences and do it. But the faster way is go right here to document settings, expand here, and then you can change your units here, and say OK.
And that just changes it from the document. Not
Yep.
your overall.
You're changing your document. So if you're always going to work in metric, then change it in your settings. Or actually, what you can do is just right here, just say set as default. And then it'll always be that thing automatically, but you can always change it. You can see that just the default settings, you have these options. So in manufacturing and everything, the standards are millimeters and inches. Those are the units you use. You don't do centimeters, you don't do feet, you don't do meters, you do millimeters or inches. But if you're doing something else, then you might mix it up. So like if you're doing, for some reason you're doing like bigger stuff and you like civil kind of stuff, or God forbid someone trying to do architecture in here. I don't know why you do that. There's much better programs for that. You could pick something else. But I've done like, actually I think I have a scale solar system in here that I just did the planets. Like each planet is actually the right size, and so I put it into feet for that, or meters. Well, it's not. You get miles in a preset.
Fair.
So, but that's where you can change it for this file here. So I can just change it there, millimeters. Say OK. And now when I dimension, you can see it's giving it to me. It's giving it to me in millimeters. So I can say 45. But if I change that setting back to inches, you can see it did the conversion. Now it's 45 millimeters is 1.772 inches. The size of it didn't change because it just changed how we're showing the units. Okay? And it'll only let you show one or the other, even though it'll store all of it. Okay? All right. So I've got this rectangle drawn. Can I move on now? No. What do I need to do? I need to dimension it. So I need to dimension. Call it 2. Oh. Now it'll turn. So I actually want to erase that equal, and I want to make this horizontal. So I can change that. There we go. There's my sketch. It's all black. I can move on. So I'm going to tell it finish sketch. So it's here. Now I can tell it what to do. So I want to extrude it. So just like Extrude shows, it takes a profile, the gray thing, and makes it go up. So if I pick on here, I can drag it up, drag it down. Notice if I go up, it's a positive number.
Go down, it's a negative number.
Go down, it's a negative number. That's the way any plane has a direction. It has the positive direction, the negative direction. So just a regular plane, it's up, whatever the sides are, coming towards you is the positive number, and then going the opposite way is the negative. If you're sketching on a part, positive is away from the part, negative is into the part. And so I'll show you that in a minute, just so I can see the wheels turning. We can also we can dimension one side or two sides. So if I do two sides, now I can go positive one direction and positive another direction with a different distance. Or I can say symmetric, so I can tell it I want to go the same distance on both sides. And I can tell it I either wanted to call out half of the distance, or I can call out the overall distance. So if I do this, the overall distance is 1.2. If I do this, what's the overall?
2.4.
2.4. So double the indicated distance. So I can do that. I can hit thin, and now it makes a piece of tube.
Okay.
What's that do? Sorry.
So if I do this one, it makes it solid.
Okay.
If I do this one, it makes it hollow.
Gotcha.
And then I can control how wide that wall is, which side it is, or if it's centered. And we'll do this more when we get to CAD 22.
Like which side? That will be
So we'll do a lot more of this thin extrude when we get to CAD 22. Because in that class we're going to make pipes and square tubing and all that stuff, rectangle tubing. So this is a good command for that. But so most of the time you're going to extrude with a solid piece. Give it direction, give it a distance. So the first thing you have to start with the distance, unless you already have another plane or something to set up to. You tell it how far you want it to go. We can also add a taper. So using this wheel, we can taper in or out. So you see again, going away from the part is a positive angle. Going in towards the part is a negative angle. So here I'm cutting away from where the part would be. So it would have been there, but if going into it, so cutting to have less material, the taper angle is negative. If I go away from the part, the taper angle is positive. And this applies to all sides of the part at once, and it is equal. So if you want to do it where it's all equal, this is an option. If you want it to apply to different things set differently, don't do this. There's other ways to do it, okay? And it's the whole height. You can't tell it to go up a little bit and then do this. Okay, does that make sense? Yes, no, yes?
Yep.
Questions? All right. So then we have this down here, operations. Right now it's going to be new body. We don't just want to do that. We want to tell it new component. So this is a part. So when we're drawing things, if we're going to have two different things, like the lid and the marker body, but also like the felt stuff inside the marker, these all need to be different components because they're physically different things. So they want to be different components. Bodies would be, so theoretically, like this could be one component with two bodies because it's never going to move. So if I'm using this, I could have it be one component with two bodies. But if I'm making this is going to be a component for the outer shell, a component for the cap, and a component for the felt. So it'll be three components, because I'm making it, so I need to have the three parts. Like I'm making this part, I'm making this part, and I'm making this part. And I'm putting them together. So it's kind of how you break up components and bodies depends on your use of it. But if I'm buying this, I'm just using it, it could be one component with three bodies. Does that make sense? No? All right. We're going to talk more about it later, but for right now, make everything a component. Okay? It makes it a little bit easier. That way when we get to having that other discussion, it'll kind of make sense. I've got some other visuals for that one already made. So, but right now, each thing, make it a component. Okay?
So it could be like three components for one body, and one body could be...
Each component has to have at least one body,
Okay.
but each component can also have other components inside of it. So, we'll get there. That's that putting it together unit. That's when we're talking about all that. Because that's when we're going to have more than one component at a time. So we do a new component. I just want to get you in the habit of making components. And I have that. I say okay. Boom. So you can see my sketch turned off. My sketch is there, it turned off. And now I have three things in my timeline. I have my original sketch. I have when it made the component. And then I have the extrude that's inside of that component. Okay, and I have a component right here on my list. So I can rename this. I can just slow click it, and then it creates box A. I can also right click on it and go to rename. But it's good to name your components so that way you you know what they are. You don't just have component 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 30, 82, whatever, right? Name your components. That way you know what that thing is.
You can find it later.
Yeah, and I can turn it off. I can turn it on. Okay? Make it easy. If I want to know some information about this thing, I can right click on it and go to properties. So it gives me the part number, the part name. The part name is going to be the same as whatever it's called here. So I could give it a different part number. So like if it's my catalog number or whatever. I can also give it a description of whatever. But there. If I could spell.
It's the something box.
Yeah. So you can fill out this information about the thing, and when we make drawings, this information goes into the drawing. It'll automatically feed into the drawing.
Okay.
Yep.
Does sketching and extruding and making objects or components always factor out in steel, or can you choose?
You can choose. The default is steel. I think you can change the default in your preferences,
Okay.
but the default is steel. But you can adjust it.
Okay.
And it changes everything. So we've got this, and then down here under physical, it gives us this. So for steel, the density of steel is 4.53 ounces per cubic inch. That's just the generic, basic general steel density. Depending on alloys, they might be different, and so we can select them like he asked, specific alloys. So we can say 5052 steel or 304 stainless or whatever, and it'll have updated to the exact density of that type of alloy. For this, I can also see that the volume is 12 cubic inches.
I want to reset the program because it's not deleting the frame from the mouse, so it's blocking whatever you're saying.
Yeah, there's a lag between your mouse and our screens,
Okay.
and it can leave mouse shadows that make it hard to see.
All right. All right. So here. Oh. All right. Let me show it again then.
That's just consistently been happening all the whole time.
Okay. Well, if you need to, so yeah.
I think
Is it better?
specific to the touch.
Okay. So it's there, and I am on the video. You can see it. So the volume, it lists the volume of 12, and so it does the math. It tells us the mass now is 54 ounces. And those are mass ounces, not liquid ounces. It tells us the area. That's the surface area of it. And it tells us where the center of mass is relative to the origin. So if you need that. And if we go down here, we can see moments of inertia and all that physics stuff. So if you were having to do some other math calculations and stuff, you have all that information. You know, if the center mass is over the footprint, it's probably going to be stable. If the center mass is out somewhere else, it's probably going to fall over. Things like that. So on this one, on the activities this week, I'm going to ask a lot of what's the volume, what's the mass. So this is where you come to see that. You just right click on it, go to properties. Yep.
Is there a way to change the material on a component by component basis?
Yep. So you already asked that, and so I was going to wait to show you guys that, but here it is. So if you go to modify, so I want to change this part, right? So I go to modify. And you guys see what that is? Physical material. That changes the actual material, the density and everything. If you do appearance, it just changes what it looks like. So we start by changing the physical material, then we can customize it more with that. And we'll get to that later on.
Okay.
But yeah, if I go to physical material and weight, so now I can go to metals and pick the exact alloy that I want.
Nice. Okay.
So I could say that I want it to be 5052. I could make a new one with whatever, but yeah, so I can, yeah. So here, I'll do that one, 41, 42, boom. Drag it over. If I do something that's different, it'll change the appearance even. So you can do that. And for that, it knows, for those preset materials, it knows everything about those. So if I double click on this and go to advanced, so I can go to the appearance settings, but if I go physical, see, it's got all the information about this thing. So it knows what it is, because it has to be able to use that for doing the analysis, because you can do stress analysis and all that stuff. So it knows.
Sucks doing all the tests on this to put the information into the program.
Pretty much
Well,
got
a lot of
every
these materials are
material.
probably already known.
Well, if you need to go information about the materials, you go to MatWeb.
Batweb?
Yep.
Spelled how it sounds.
MATUWEB. You type in any material, and it'll tell you everything about it.
MXU?
No, MatWeb. MATWEB. Oh, I meant to show you guys that in 22. So that's how I can measure the volume, the mass, the physical things of this whole part. If I need to measure other things, there's a few ways to do it. One way is I can just click on an edge, right, before like I did earlier, and then down in the bottom right corner, it tells me the information about that. So it tells me that at one edge length 4 inches. If I pick 2 points, it's going to tell me the distance between those points. So any 2 points is going to find the shortest line between those 2 points and give me that distance. If I pick a face, depending on what it is, like here it's giving me the area of that face. If I pick one and hold control and pick another one, so control is your key to pick multiple things. It actually will also let you shift to pick multiple things too. So you pick 2 faces, it's going to give you the angle between them. You pick 2 lines, it's going to give you the angle between them. Okay, so that's just kind of your shortcut. Measuring distances, measuring areas, kind of thing. If I had a cylinder, well, let's just draw one over here. See, no matter, even though I give it a diameter, it's not going to turn black until I can give it some dimensions. There. Extrude, new component. So if I pick this outside here, it's giving me the radius of it. If you pick on a cylinder, you probably want another radius. Pick here, gives me the area of that face. Pick an edge, just give me not the circumference, but the diameter. But what if I want the circumference? I want to know what the circumference of that is.
Right click.
Control and pick the edge and the face.
Right click doesn't work.
Okay.
Control just tells us 2 things. Look at the screen.
Click component 2 and then go into its properties.
Right.
Because that's going to give me
What is it?
my mass and everything. But it's not going to give me that circumference of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right here. The ruler.
Okay.
Look at the screen. Look at the menus. A lot of times the pictures tells you what you want to do. So if I go to inspect, I can have a bunch of different stuff. So I actually do have like a center of mass button here. So if I want to visually see that center of mass, I can see that. I have a section out so I can cut them in half just to see it cut, not in a sketch. Kind of does what the slice does. A bunch of other stuff for complex curves and stuff. Don't worry about it. But measure, right here, this top one. The one that's the button at the top. If I go here and I pick that, now I see this. So the radius, the diameter, the area, and the loop length. If I pick this face, I see that. So what was the loop length?
It's the perimeter of all connected surfaces.
Yeah, it's the total of all the edges.
Yeah.
So the edge length of one side of this is 3.14 because it's pi. This is the diameter of 1, so that should be right, right? If I pick that face, the loop length is twice pi. It's double, because that's counting this edge and this edge. If I pick down here, it's still the same thing. So if I pick two different faces, it's going to give me that distance between those two things, but also the angle and the information for each of those things I pick. So if I pick 2 points, it's going to give me the total distance between them, but I can also turn on this button here and see the breakdown of x and y, not just the straight distance.
I don't understand why loop length is. What would you use that for?
Because it is. I don't know.
It's just something that.
Yes, don't ask.
All right.
So yeah, you can use this to get the XY breakdown of it. And they have it here because you could, I think, or it kind of goes the opposite direction, depending on how you want it to be. And here's where you can change your units. So you can see that in inches and metric. So that line is 11 inches or 279.4 millimeters. So I can kind of see that. So here's just picking those. I can use this to just select the bodies themselves. So now it's giving me that minimum distance between those two parts. Things like that, okay? So that's that. And so again, we can turn components on and off separately. Any questions on any of that stuff so far? What if I decide that I want this box? I think I made it. What was it? 2 by 4, right? But I want it 2 by 3 instead. What do I do?
Edit sketch.
Yeah, go back to that original sketch. Don't add on another inch. People want to do that. Don't do that. Go back to the original sketch and change it. So I want it 2 by 3, so change this to 3. Hit finish and it's done. That edge is now 3. Okay? I want to make it taller. I go back to this extrude, make it 3 inches tall.
You can double click the
Double click here.
face.
Now I can edit the taper. I don't think so. No.
I thought we could double click the. Oh no, that's when
Double click the extrude.
No, the face we extruded.
No.
No.
No. You could extrude that face
Oh, there you go.
and make it a new extrude. But don't just do that to add on, make it bigger or smaller. Go back and edit the original sketch or whatever the feature is. Don't be like, oh, I need to make it another inch. Ta-da! No, don't do that. Because now you have to, you want to change the width, you have to change it here or here. It's not right. Do the one thing. Here. I can also, when I started, we sketched on the planes. We can sketch on the side of the part also. So if I create a sketch, I can pick on the faces of the part. So now the sketch plane is out here. You can see when I rotate, the sketch plane is on that surface. So now I can create a rectangle from the corner there to cut this off. And then so now I can dimension and you can see that when I'm here, I have two profiles. I have a closed profile there and a closed profile there. Because it automatically takes the edges of that face and makes it so you can use them. It makes them lines on your sketch. I could just double click here and delete that. But see, oh, I lost that corner now. So don't do that. Just leave them there. Because now I can pick what I want. One thing I can do though is I don't need this line down here. I might delete that line. Now I only have one closed profile. If you have two closed profiles and you go to extrude, you have to tell which one you want to use. And then, so sometimes if there's a little overlap, there can be some issues. Please pay attention to me, not you doing your own work. Pay attention to me. I'm sure you don't know all this already. Okay.
Only 3.5 hours worth of videos.
That's not me. Remember, my way is different. I want you to learn it my way. So, all right. So we have those there. If I go back to that sketch and I delete one of those lines, now when I go to extrude, it automatically picks the one thing that's left. So depending on what geometry you have, that makes it easier sometimes, because now you have only one thing. And so it makes it a bit easier. And so again, we're going to go extrude. Positive number goes away from the part. Negative number goes into the part and changes it to a cut. So if I say negative 0.5, it's going to be a cut. If I try to say a join going in, it'll let me do it, but nothing happens. So you want to make sure that's the cut to go in. You can also do an intersect where it'll find the common space between what was already there and what your sketch is. So later on we'll get to this. It's not used as often, but when you need it, you need it. So I can also, now that I've had a cut, I can change it to a join and make it go out. So you can change that feature from being a cut to a join or back and forth by changing the direction and changing what the feature type, what the
that
extrude type is.
join, it basically added on to that original box you had.
Yep. Yep. By making join, it just added on this existing thing. If I was here and I did it, and I told it, new component, what do you think is going to happen?
It's going to have a line separating it from the original box.
Because now I have the original box and I have this new component. Now they're separate parts. And so when we get to doing assemblies and things, this is a way that, one of the things that really is good about Fusion is that you can draw all your parts lined up with each other, and so that they're already lined up, and you can use information from one part to make the other part really easily. In SolidWorks do that, you can do it, but it's just the way the file structures are makes it a little bit more complex. But here it's meant to work this way. That's called top down, because you're working in the assembly the whole time. But yes, but you could make this a join, say okay. Oops. It already made the new one. Come on. Turn that sketch back on. So here I can turn, if I want to see a sketch, I can turn it back on here. And like I said, I like to do use a sketch, use it for one thing, and move on. Whereas opposed to the other people that like sometimes to make big complicated sketches they want to reuse. You notice the default behavior is that the sketch gets turned off as soon as you're done with it. That's because the intent is you use it, you leave it alone. So in most cases, use a sketch once, it turns it off. If you need to do something else, just make a new sketch. Don't go back and do a bunch of stuff on that one sketch. There are times, there's always exceptions, right? When that sometimes is beneficial. We'll talk about that later in probably CAD 20 next semester. Okay? So any questions on this? No? All right. So far we talked about doing that. So if I do this, it's like I tell it to be cut. I can tell it to go into it. This extent, this is an important piece. You want to be able to tell it where to go. So if I wanted to go all the way through this part, I could go here, right? That's just kind of all the way through the part. I could say okay, and great. But what if I make this part wider? What's going to happen?
This is going to make the square, but it's not going to make
The cut won't go all the way through.
Yeah, make this back to 5. Now the cut doesn't go all the way through.
Okay.
We want it to be intelligent. If you want that cut to go all the way through, tell it to go all the way through. Tell it to go all the way through. And now no matter what I change this to, that cut's going all the way through. Or I can tell it, if I want just a little bit, I want an inch from left here, I can say go all the way to this object, and I tell it an offset of an inch. So I want to go into the part, right? So negative inch. Now it's going to stop an inch short of that face, no matter how wide that part is. So go back here, we get 3. It stops an inch short. Maybe I don't want it to start here. I want to start a half inch into the part. So now instead of starting on the profile plane, I can tell it to start with an offset of half an inch. Negative, because I want to go into the part. Oh. So
Achieve that with,
I could have just drawn a rectangle here and gone in, right?
yeah,
Or here and gone in.
or like a groove.
Well, but there's no groove command,
Oh,
right?
I'm thinking of something else then. I'm just labeling it wrong.
So but yeah, so I could have drawn a square here and gone that way. Or I could have drawn a square here and gone that way.
But then you wouldn't be able to.
So it depends on, so that's part of the knowing which one to pick. Because, yeah, sometimes, depending on what it is, because I could have the same feature here, and in some cases I might want to draw it here. Some cases I might want to draw it here. Some cases I might want to draw it here. Depending on other factors. So right now this is just a block, we don't know, so they're all good. But if we had other factors going on, which will, that's when we start looking at parts of looking at this and trying to figure out the best way to draw it, or looking at this, how are we going to draw this, then that now kind of which way is better becomes a little bit more apparent. Okay, does that make sense? So right now, just kind of remember, I'm showing you the options. When we start looking at parts, then we'll be able to pick, okay, what's the best option for this situation? Now that we know the options, that's the one that I never did for 20 years. Now it's like I can use it in this instance, and this instance, and this time. Like I use it a lot now. Because like, oh, I can just do this. I don't have to make it. The other way was you make a new plane down there, and now you make the sketch on this plane, which is now inside the part. And now you have to slice it so you can see what's on your sketch plane, and blah, blah, blah. You have to project the edges, and it makes it a lot more complicated. Whereas I draw it here, it's easy. And so it's like, oh, why haven't I been doing this? So I'm just giving you the tools. Like, here's how you use a screwdriver. This is a box-in wrench. This is an open-in wrench. Yes, you can use the same thing for both most of the time, but sometimes you might want to use a box-in over the open. Sometimes you want to use the open over the box-in, right? That's why they have both. Because sometimes one is better than the other. Sometimes you want to use a socket. They're just different tools that all do the same thing. Which way is better? Yes. Depends on what you're doing.
Just don't use the pliers and the hammer.
Sometimes you got to use the pliers and hammer. All right, so that's what I want you to kind of do is go and play with some of these other options. Try out the different start and stops. The exercise that I give you is some certain things I want you to do, but don't just do those. Do some other things. Make another part. Try those things out on those other parts. Try using some of these other options. See what they do. Now that you've got some little structure to it. Yeah.
So now that you have that cut in that square, is there a way to mirror that cut into an object just really
Yes,
quickly?
of course. We're not going to do that today, though. If you want to figure it out, figure it out.
Okay.
But they're easily. That's why I said we draw a half, we flip it over to the other half, right? So we'll do that. But if you want to try and go ahead, figure it out. But for right now, I want you to get comfortable using the extrude command. Okay? Any questions? Yes, no? All right. Well, I am going to turn off the recording, but I'm just going to show you what it is here. So here we have kind of these 4 things. So this sketching and measuring one, I showed it the other day. Oops. It's going to be asking you questions about the interface and the measuring stuff. Most of the questions are going to be clicking on the image. So where do you go to change the units? Which command is extrude? Blah, 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 blah. So this is the one that's going to ask you those things. Extrude 1, 2, and 3 are going to have you draw a sketch and extrude it, change some back, go back, change the sketch, change the extrude, and measure the volume or the distance between 2 points or something like that. Okay? So those, and then extrude 3 will be kind of like that last one. It'll go in and you'll go back like 2 sketches to change the base feature, and then you'll go back and you'll change the last feature and stuff. So if the wording is a little confusing at all, let me know. I tried to make it where it makes sense, but that doesn't always work with what's in my head and make it easy for you. But so if something doesn't work, let me know. I can always change the wording. I want to make it better, so if you give me feedback, I can make it better, not just for you guys, but for everybody else who takes this class after you. So, and if something just doesn't work at all, let me know. So those are there. After that, the rest of this, the holes isn't ready yet. So I'm gonna try. We might get to it today. We also are going to talk about the standards today too before we leave. So I'm going to give you some time to draw, to navigate through this, see where we go, and then, but kind of if you get to extrude 3 and you're done with that, play with it. Practice doing other things in the sketches. Practice dimensioning. Practice trying out the different terminations and going back and making changes and things like that. Okay, you don't have to do something big and complex. You just keep it simple, but try and get comfortable using the commands. The more comfortable you are with the commands, the better it'll be. Okay, any questions yet? No. All right.